Hey you guys, welcome back to the Mongoose Mini Series. This will be episode number 2. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the headset on this Mongoose fat bike. Now, just like the bottom bracket that we discussed in episode 1, the headset can suffer from the exact same problems. Under lubrication and over tightening, especially when it's new from the factory. Okay, so if you just ordered the bike and it came in a box, you're going to be in great shape because the bars in the front wheel are already going to be removed. However, if you bought it at the store and it was already pre-assembled, you're going to have to pull the wheel off and the bars off before we can go through and do this project. So let's get those off right now. Now to get the wheel off, you're going to need a 15mm either socket wrench or a regular wrench, and for the bars, you're going to need a 5mm Allen key. So let's get the wheel off. And you guys will notice I've actually got this stabilized on this jack stand. If you don't have one, a block of wood will work just fine, a cinder block, whatever you got that'll hold the bike up and steady. Now to get the wheel off and past the caliper, it takes a little wiggle, but once you get it off, no problem. And now to pull the bars off, you're going to need your 5mm Allen. I've already loosened most of these bolts so they won't be too hard to get out. Okay, so there you have it. So the front of the stem comes off with those 4 bolts, and then the bars come off, and these are just going to hang loose. Now, if you're going through and replacing the headset, it may be worth your time to take the caliper off. I'm actually going to be painting the bike, so the caliper's got to come off anyways, so I'll be taking that off, and I'll be taking the rest of the stuff off, particularly because I'm also replacing these bars. Alright, next step, super easy. We're going to pull the fork off, and this is probably the easiest thing you can do to a bike. As far as it goes, all you've got to do is remove the stem, and all you're going to need is a 5mm Allen. What you'll do is take the 2 side bolts out of the stem, and these clamp it onto the fork. And you don't even have to take them off, just take them loose. And once the stem's loose like that, you should be good. And to get the fork out, take this top bolt, take it all the way out. It's going to have to come completely out. Once that's out, hold on to your fork so it doesn't drop. Take your stem off, take your spacers, and then drop the fork out. Super easy. Alright, so at this point, if you're looking to go back through, re-grease the original bearings, and put the fork back in without changing your headset, I'd like to direct you over to my recent video on headset repairs. It's going to give you a nice tutorial on how to do everything, go through and grease it, and reassemble it. I'll put a link to that right here. Now, if you're hanging out and you actually want to see how to remove the headset so that you can go through and upgrade, I'm going to show you how. So the nice thing about this is I am not worried about these cups at all. I'm going to be completely replacing everything. So I'm just going to use a hammer and a long screwdriver to knock them out. If for whatever reason you want to conserve them or try to prevent from any sort of damage to the cups, I strongly suggest actually getting a cup removal tool, and I'll throw that down in the description. As far as taking them out, it's really easy. You take your long flathead screwdriver, you stick it down until it hits the cup, and then I hold pressure against the front and just give it a good tap. And you're going to have to work back and forth, and eventually just pop out. Just like that. To do the top, all you're going to do is flip the bike over and do the exact same thing. Alright, so let's talk a second for upgraded headsets so you guys can get an understanding of what we're looking at. So right here, you've got the original headset, and right here, you've got my new FSA Pig headset. And what I want to show you particularly, this is the lower cup from the original, and this is the original bearing. Now look at the new cup by comparison. That thing is a tank. And when you look at the ball bearings, you'll see these are massive by comparison, and these things can take an absolute pounding without giving up. Now the top cups are actually roughly the same size. This one's actually a little bit taller, but the bearings are also roughly the same size, and that's because the lower bearing tends to take the brunt of the damage whenever you have a hard hit or a really hard jolt to the front. As far as installing these, we're going to need to either utilize a headset cup press, or you're going to need to make a special tool just like I have. As far as the tool that I've made, I used an old 2x4 with a 3/8 hole drilled in it. I got this piece of metal. It's actually a cap for a electrical junction box, and I drilled a 3/8 hole in that. I got a 3/8 rod, 2 3/8 nuts, and 2 3/8 washers. And I'll show you how to utilize this while it's on the bike itself. As far as installing the headset cup, it's really easy. So you take your rod with the piece of metal already threaded onto it, You put your cup up there just till it touches the metal, and you set it down through your head tube. And I just kind of get it to where it's sort of aligned. And you take your block of wood and your other nut and washer, and you put those on the other side. You put the rod through, hold it in place, and just put on your washer and your nut. Okay, so once you're at this point, what you want to do is you want to set it to where it's going to be just about perfectly centered and going straight down with the tube, and then just tighten it down a little bit so it stays in place. Then you're going to take your 2 wrenches and you're just going to tighten down the nuts, and they're going to pull the cup into the head tube here. Once you've got these tightened all the way down and the cup's all the way installed, you can flip it over and do the other side. Now I'm not going to go any further because I'm actually going to be painting the bike before I do this, so I don't want to have to knock that headset out too many times. It's a super easy process to install a new upgraded headset. Once you've got it installed, the only things you have left are to grease them and to reinstall your fork and stem and just put everything back together. If you don't know how to do that, please go check out my video on headset repair. It'll show you everything you need to know to go back together. As far as the mini series goes, this is our 2nd episode. I'll be coming to you with a 3rd soon, outlining the hubs on this bike and showing you how to make that paint booth. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and if you got any questions or comments, throw them down in that comment section. Thanks again.